Right. One thing they have in common is not that they're nuts. They may have that in common. But they're isolated. They're alone. They're all alone. They're always loners. And, that's why I have somewhat of a problem with people who say I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. It means I can be alone. I don't have to have I don't have to be accountable. I don't have to have community. I don't have to give support, nor do I need support from anybody else, as long as I can pray to God and get what I want, kind of have access to God. Anyway, but this is what I see misinterpreted all the time. I do believe God brings bad out of tragic situations. Absolutely do.
What do you say you do believe that God
brings good from tragedy? That I don't think God causes the tragedy so that the good will happen. I had a young person, a girl I dealt with in my first congregation in Dallas a long time ago, recently died. And so I got contact with people I have not been in contact with for 30 years. And one of those was a woman that I went through about a year in intensive care with. Her husband was 36 and had an aneurysm. Got exploded in the shower one morning. He had 6 kids, all elementary school and younger. And the struggle. And so it was kind of the first time, because I think about, his name was Jack over the years, and they discovered not only the one that burst, he had 3 more ready to burst, and so he was taking care of, and the neurosurgeon was brilliant, but he had the people skills of a dime. I mean, he had no people skills. And he came in and he'd announced he's going to die, we just don't know when, but in the meantime, since he's not dead yet, I'm going to try this. That was his caring style. Well, Jack survived. And, he even regained the ability to walk. He used a cane, obviously, and his speech returned, and it was absolutely amazing after all he went through. But he was in the hospital for over a year. And, but one time, right after the first aneurysm, and we're within the first 48 hours, and they don't feel he's going to make it. His in-laws were there. His sister and brother-in-law and their pastor was there when I walked up that day. And the pastor looked at me with a big smile and said, "Isn't it great what God is doing through Jack getting sick?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, obviously, since Jack had this aneurysm, look how all these people's lives has changed. And God caused this to happen to Jack so that Ted here will stop drinking. And he hasn't had a drink now in 3 days. Praise the Lord, isn't it wonderful?" At which point, his wife got up and ran down the hall in tears. And I ran on after her, and she said, "Get away from me. I don't want a part of you or any God who would take my husband away so that this asshole will stop drinking." And I said, "Neither do I." And then from then on, we were good friends, and that was it. But that was the most intense time where I saw this at work. And I just went back and told him, "Sharon doesn't want you to be here. You need to leave, and you need to make sure that your ministry to this family, that you do it outside of Sharon's presence." And I was all of 27, talking to this 50-year-old pastor. Yeah. So some of you who know me, that won't surprise you, but that was kind of out of character for me at that point in time. Now it would be much easier. But that was the worst abuse of this passage. And from that time on, it was, Liz?
I don't think I've ever noticed this before, but it's almost like we proof text that passage right there, because if we go back to verses right before and after, it's, "For in hope
Well, yeah, and to me it's a good verse for me to pull out. There's certain verses that I do pull out and rely upon, and that's one of them. But I guess the reason why I pull it out is because I believe that God does save, and that God's love is present, and I can't be separated from that. So now that I have that love in my life, how do I, in the midst of these circumstances, live my life in such a way that I have hope for a future even though right now I see no hope? Hope to me is seeing that there is some good that can come from this, and that God can do something here in the midst of this. Now thank we all our God is one of those songs we sing every Thanksgiving, but the author of that did 600 and some funerals in 1 year, including his wife. It was during the plague. And yet he was able, through his faith and seeing, I'm still thankful. What am I thankful for? My circumstances? No. I'm thankful that the love of God will sustain me and keep me through. And that this isn't all there is. And that this too will end. And that's when we get to the end of this chapter. There's nothing that can separate us from God's love. Nothing. Nothing on this earth. There is no illness. There is no mental illness. There is nothing that can separate us from the love of God. It's been shown us through the death and resurrection of Christ. So when you hang on to that and you say, if nothing can separate me from God's love, now God, how are you going to use me to accomplish the purpose that you want? And if you don't think that, Leah, you want to share what that woman said on Saturday at Rita's funeral from Freedom Village?
We've had several church members at Freedom Village, and she was there because she knew Rita and wanted to honor her, and she was just thought that this congregation was a place of light and love because they've seen the families of our members, they've seen pastoral care, they've seen Stephen ministers, they've seen Christmas carolers, and she just felt that this place was a place that was really making a difference in people's lives.
Michelle, I remember her also saying that Rita was a blessing to her. That she would have that twinkle in her eye,
Yeah.
that smile, and that, there's a blessing there. And so there's Rita half in, half out, but when she smiled, it made an impact. So, here's a person dealing with older folks in there for the most part, and then what she does in her church is she's a mentor to young adults. So she's kind of taking this experience that she receives from there and transmitting it to the younger ones, who she says have a lot of issues. And we believe that good will come out of all those issues somehow, and that's our hope. So hope isn't wishful thinking. Hope is that God has a purpose and that God's love will see us through and that good things can happen. But that doesn't mean we always see the good things when we're in the midst of this stuff.
Right.
When it's dark, it's really dark. Just want you to know that. It's really dark. But, I don't care how small your candle is. The smallest candle changes the darkness. It doesn't take a big candle to bring light into a room. It just takes a little one. Any light changes that. And if we can hold on to the light, the love of Christ in our lives, the darkness can begin to dispel. But if we give that up, the darkness overcomes us. That's John's gospel. And he's got a good point. Mm-hmm. Because when it closes in on me, it's when I assume that there's nobody for me and nobody with me. And then the darkness, and then I'm doomed. I'm stuck. I can't go anywhere. Gotta hang on to that. But sometimes the light's pretty small. It's pretty dim. It's still there. And the darkness, no matter how dark it gets, it can't take away the little bit of light that's there. You can't increase the level of darkness to eliminate light. The only way you eliminate light is to take away the light. Don't let anybody take the light of Christ out of your lives. Hang on to it. So that's the end. We often read that at memorial services, which is kind of unfortunate because it's a wonderful way to live. It's a reminder that we're not in this alone and that God goes with us. All right, well that took the whole stinking time.
A good time.
I want to know what you think about spiritual warfare. We got any spiritual warfare people here? No? None of you are fighting spiritual warfare battles?
Don't you think we kind of fight every day in a way, temptation versus, I don't know if that's spiritual warfare or not, but we fight the temptation, the easy road, versus trying to live in the Spirit. I mean, it's not a daily,
Oh, it is. Absolutely, it's daily.
I don't know if you call it spiritual warfare or not, but,
Well, you put on the armor of God, right?
right.
That whole passage from Ephesians 6. Put on the armor.